There is a man in your life whose consistency makes you uncomfortable. You tell yourself he was built differently. He was not. He closed a door that you reopen every single morning. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly where that door is. You know who he is, the one who never misses. He trains when it rains. He works when no one is watching. He said one sentence about his life 3 years ago, and he is still living by it today. When his name comes up, people lower their voices. They call him a machine. They laugh when they say it, but underneath the laughter there is something no one admits: discomfort. Because his existence proves that the excuses everyone else lives by are optional. If you have ever wondered what truly separates that man from you, stay until the end, because this video will hand you the exact mechanism. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment below the one habit you keep restarting, not the one you failed, the one you keep restarting. That difference matters more than you think. Let me tell you about Jake. Jake was not weak. That is the first thing you must understand. He was smart, competent, and respected at work, the kind of man other people asked for advice. And yet, his private life was a graveyard of abandoned routines. The gym program from January, the 5-morning routine that lasted 9 days. The book is still open on page 30. Every Sunday night, he planned his week with real hope. By Wednesday, the plan had been quietly adjusted. By Friday, it was gone. And the worst part was not failing. The worst part came after. Every time Jake made a new promise to himself, a quiet voice inside him already knew he would not keep it. Jake had stopped trusting his own word. If you have ever felt that, you know it is a different kind of pain. It does not scream. It just sits there, underneath everything you do. So here is the thesis of this video. What separates Jake from the man who never misses is not strength. It is not genetics. It is not discipline, the way you have been taught to understand it. One of them closed a door. The other keeps reopening it every morning without even knowing he is doing it. Jake eventually found that door, but his discovery did not begin with a book or a morning routine. It began with a sentence a colleague said to him across a dinner table. A sentence that offended him so deeply he could not sleep that night. In a moment you will hear that sentence, and there is a good chance it will offend you too. The dinner happened on an ordinary Thursday. A small group from work, a table in the corner, the kind of conversation that fills time and disappears. At some point someone brought up training, and Jake said the thing he always said: "I wish I had your discipline, Chris." He said it as a compliment. He said it the way you toss a coin to a street musician, without thinking. Chris looked at him for a moment and answered in a calm, flat voice: "You do not lack discipline, Jake. Your problem is that every promise you make to yourself is an opening offer." The table laughed. Jake laughed too, and then he went home and sat in his car in the garage for 20 minutes because something in that sentence had gone through him like a blade. An opening offer. That is what you put on the table when you expect a negotiation. Nobody makes an opening offer unless they are already prepared to give ground. That night, Jake did something he had never done. He stopped defending himself and ran an honest audit of the last 5 years. And what he found was worse than failure. He found that he had never actually quit anything. Not once. There was no moment where he stood up and said, "I am done with this." What he found instead was a long, quiet history of adjustments. The gym 5 times a week became 3 because 3 was more realistic. The 5 in the morning start became 6 because sleep matters too. 20 minutes of meditation became 10, then 5, then a deep breath in the car on the way to work, which he told himself still counted. Nothing in Jake's life had ever died. Everything had shrunk. Every commitment he had ever made was still technically alive somewhere, reduced to a version so small it no longer weighed anything at all. Now pay attention to what actually happened inside those adjustments. Not one of them ever argued against the goal. The voice inside Jake never said, "Quit training, health does not matter." It never said, "Stay average, drop the book, forget the business idea." That voice would have been easy to recognize and easy to fight. This one was different. It agreed with the goal completely. It only wanted to discuss the terms. Not today, you are exhausted, and training exhausted is how people get injured. Start Monday, a clean week is psychologically better anyway. Do the short version, something is better than nothing. Listen to the vocabulary: later, less, lighter, tomorrow, just this once. It never sounds like sabotage. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like self-care. It sounds exactly like the advice a good friend would give you. There is a name for the place where this voice operates, and you need to learn it because you will recognize it. The negotiation gap. The space that opens between the moment you decide something and the moment you are supposed to do it. Inside that gap, every commitment you have ever made gets quietly rewritten. You decided at 9 at night, full of conviction, but the execution belongs to another moment, another mood, another version of you. The alarm rings at 5 in the morning, and the man who made that promise is not the man holding the phone. The man holding the phone did not agree to anything. He was not in the room, so he reopens the deal. And here is what almost no one understands. The debate itself is the defeat, not the outcome of the debate. The debate, the moment your mind opens the question of whether today counts, you have already lost something, no matter what you decide, because the commitment has been demoted from a fact to a proposal. Ask yourself, honestly, how many times this month has that voice given you an argument that was, in the moment, completely reasonable? That is the weapon, and you need to see it clearly. This enemy never wins big battles. It does not need to. It wins concessions so small and so sensible that agreeing to them feels like maturity. One skipped morning is nothing. One lighter session is nothing. And each nothing sets the price of the next negotiation a little lower. You never feel yourself losing. You just look up one Friday and the plan from Sunday is gone again, and you cannot point to a single moment where you chose to abandon it. That is why willpower was never going to save Jake. He kept showing up to fight, morning after morning, and he kept losing to an opponent that sounded more reasonable than he did. For weeks after that dinner, Jake carried the diagnosis around like a stone. He thought he finally understood himself. I am the man who loses the negotiation. But that conclusion, as painful as it was still wrong, and the truth underneath it was stranger and far more uncomfortable. The problem was never that Jake lost negotiations. The problem was that a negotiation was happening at all. The man who never misses does not win that daily argument. He has never heard it. And the reason why comes from a psychologist born more than a century ago, who described the exact mechanism that was quietly dismantling Jake's life. Using an image so simple, it will change the way you see every single skip day for the rest of yours. His name was William James. He taught at Harvard in the late 1800s. He is considered by many the father of American psychology, and more than a century ago, he wrote down the exact mechanism that was dismantling Jake's life. Not in a motivational book, in a psychology textbook called The Principles of Psychology, published in the year 1890. In that book, James gave one instruction that sounds almost cruel to modern ears. Never suffer an exception to occur until the new habit is securely rooted in your life. Read that again. Not be kind to yourself while you build the habit. Not aim for consistency most of the time. Never suffer an exception. And then he explained why, with an image so simple you will never forget it. Building a habit, James wrote, is like carefully winding a ball of string. Every repetition is one more turn. Day after day, turn after turn, the ball grows. But a single slip of the hand does not pause the winding. It drops the ball. And when a wound ball of string hits the floor, it does not sit there waiting for you. It rolls. It unwinds. One slip, James warned, undoes more than a great many turns can wind again. Now stop and think about what that actually means, because it explains something you have felt your entire life and never understood. Have you noticed that when you skip 3 days of the gym, coming back does not feel like day 12? It feels like day 1. The weight of it, the internal resistance, the dread in your chest, all of it returns at full strength, as if the previous 2 weeks had never happened. You thought that was a feeling. It is not a feeling. It is an accurate report. Because a habit, underneath everything, is your nervous system slowly learning that a behavior is no longer a question. Every repetition writes the same message, a little deeper. This is what we do now. This is no longer up for discussion. And one exception does not whisper a different message. It screams one. This is optional. This can be reopened. The terms are revisable. One exception teaches your brain that the door Chris talked about at that dinner is not just unlocked, it is standing wide open. And here's where James and the negotiation gap lock together into one machine. Every exception is a payment. When Jake accepted one reasonable adjustment, he was not buying one day of rest. He was funding the next negotiation. Each concession lowered the price of the following one. Skipping Monday made Thursday cheaper. The lighter session this week made the shorter week normal by next month. The ball was not sitting still between his efforts. It was rolling backward down the hall while he congratulated himself for needing rest. That is why Jake always started over from zero. Not because he was weak. Because he genuinely was at zero. His restarts were not resuming something paused. They were beginning something undone. Jake read James on a Sunday afternoon, and for the first time in years, he felt something dangerous. Hope. He finally had the mechanism in his hands. He could name the voice. He could see the string. He knew the cost of a single exception down to the decimal. And a writer named Stephen Pressfield, in a book called The War of Art, handed him one more weapon. Pressfield spent his career studying the force that stops creators from creating, and he gave it a name, resistance. But his most useful discovery was not the name, it was this. Resistance is predictable. It is not a storm that strikes at random. It arrives at the same hours, wearing the same clothes, reading from the same script. So Jake mapped his enemy like a security guard maps a burglar. The voice spoke loudest at 10 at night, when tomorrow's promise was still cheap to break. And again, in the first 90 seconds after the alarm, when his body was heavy and the bed was warm. Same hours, same arguments, every single time. An enemy that predictable, Jake thought, cannot possibly keep beating me. For 2 weeks, he was right. 14 days, 14 turns of the string, not one exception. It was the best run of his adult life, and he knew the mechanism was the reason. Then came a Friday. A brutal week at work, a project collapsing, 4 hours of sleep, and cold rain hammering the windows at 5 in the morning. The alarm rang, and the voice did not show up with its usual script. It showed up with James himself. You know the mechanism now, it said. You understand exceptions. So you know that one strategic rest day, chosen consciously, is not really an exception. It is recovery. You have earned it. And knowing everything he knew, holding the mechanism in his hands like a loaded weapon, Jake reached over and turned off the alarm. Understanding had not saved him. The negotiation had simply learned his new language. And lying there in the dark, wide awake and furious at himself, Jake finally asked the only question that matters. If knowing the mechanism is not enough, what is? The answer was not more information. It was a missing piece of architecture. Something Chris had been living by for years without ever explaining it. And it is the piece that separates every man who understands discipline from the very few who ever become it. Jake did the only thing left to do. He went back to Chris, not at a dinner this time. He asked him to lunch, sat down across from him, and put the question on the table like a man handing over his wallet. How do you win the argument? The one at 5 in the morning. The one that says, today does not count. I know everything about that argument now, and I still lose it. Tell me how you win it. And Chris frowned, honestly confused, and gave the answer that broke Jake's entire model of discipline. What argument? There is no argument. I have not had that conversation in years. Sit with that answer for a second, because everything turns on it. Jake had spent his whole adult life believing that disciplined men were winners of a daily internal war. That somewhere inside Chris, every single morning, the same negotiation took place, and Chris simply crushed it with superior willpower. The truth was stranger. The negotiation did not happen at all. And if you want to feel this in your own body right now, notice something. Tonight you will brush your teeth. There will be no debate about it. No weighing of how tired you are. No promise to brush twice as long tomorrow. The question of whether tonight counts does not exist. Is that discipline? Of course not. It is something else entirely. Somewhere in your past, that door was closed, and a closed question consumes nothing, it just executes. That is the dividing line, and it is worth saying plainly. Every commitment you carry is one of two kinds, reversible or closed. A reversible commitment stays open to conditions. It listens to weather, mood, energy, circumstances, and because it listens, it must hold a hearing every single day, and every hearing is another chance to lose. A closed commitment has stopped listening. It does not check how you feel, for the same reason a river does not check the calendar. The behavior has moved out of the category of questions and into the category of facts. If this is you, if you are watching this and recognizing years of your own hearings, like this video, because what comes next is going to hurt in the useful way. Here's what this revelation did to Jake's understanding of his own past. Every strategy he had ever tried was a weapon for fighting inside the negotiation. Habit apps to shame him into showing up. Rewards to bribe the voice. Motivation videos at midnight to outshout it. All of it accepted the same premise, that the debate must happen and must be won. Even his flexibility, the adjustments he was proudest of, the realistic 3 days a week, the kinder 6 in the morning, he had called it self-compassion. It was the opposite. Flexibility was the concession that kept the door permanently open, a standing invitation for the voice to return tomorrow with better arguments. He had been polishing his debate skills when the entire skill was making the debate impossible. And that is when the definition arrived, the one this whole video has been walking toward. Consistency is not a war you win every morning. Consistency is a decision you make once and then never make again. Read the second half twice, never make again. The man who never misses is not deciding daily and winning daily. He decided one time, years ago, and every morning since has simply been the execution of a decision that is no longer open. But be careful here, because Jake's next thought is probably the same one you are having. Just decide once, that sounds clean. It also sounds exactly like every New Year's resolution ever made, and those are decisions made once, and they are dead by February. So what is the difference between a resolution that dissolves and a door that actually stays closed? The difference is architecture. A closed door is not a feeling of resolve. It is a structure with specific parts, and it has to be built in a specific place. Because here is the final problem, the one that stops almost everyone. Most men who try to close the door slam it in the wrong spot entirely. To close it, you need to know exactly where it is, and where it is will surprise you. So, where is the door? Here is the answer, and it is the most practical thing you will hear today. The door is not at 5 in the morning. The moment the alarm rings is not where commitments live or die. That moment is just where the body shows up. The door is where the terms are written, and this is why almost every man fails. When most men decide to change, they close the door on the biggest version of the promise, gym, every single day. 2 hours of deep work, the full ritual, the perfect week. They slam the door on the ceiling, and the first brutal Friday, when the ceiling becomes impossible, the whole commitment shatters because there was nothing underneath it. Jake had done this his entire life. The door does not get closed at the ceiling, it gets closed at the floor. That became the first law of Jake's code. Close the exception clause by defining the floor. The floor is the version of the commitment that survives your worst day, not your average day, your worst one. Sick, exhausted, traveling, buried at work. For Jake, it became this: 10 minutes at the same hour, every day, no matter what the day looked like. Everything above 10 minutes was ambition, and ambition could flex. But the floor did not listen to circumstances. Remember what William James said about the ball of string. On a terrible day, a small turn still winds the string. The floor exists so that the answer to the question, does today count, is never no, because there is no version of a day where 10 minutes is impossible. The exception clause is closed by making the exception unnecessary. The second law came from research Jake never expected to find. A psychologist named Peter Gollwitzer spent decades studying why intentions fail, and his studies on what he calls implementation intentions found something almost embarrassing in its simplicity. People who decide in advance exactly what they will do when an obstacle appears follow through at dramatically higher rates than people who simply commit harder. The reason connects to everything you now know. An undecided obstacle forces a decision under stress, and a decision under stress reopens the negotiation at the worst possible moment. So Jake sat down on a calm Sunday and wrote out every circumstance that had ever killed a routine of his: travel, illness, late nights at work, guests in the house, and he pre-decided every single one. If I am traveling, the 10 minutes happen in the hotel room before breakfast. If I am sick, the floor drops to 2 minutes, but it happens at the same hour. When the obstacle arrived, there was nothing to discuss. The answer had been written weeks earlier by a calmer man. The third law changed what Jake counted. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, describes every action you take as a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Jake stopped measuring workouts and pages and minutes and started counting votes. This reframe matters more than it sounds. A missed workout is a performance problem, and performance problems invite adjustment, and adjustment is the voice's favorite word. But a vote is about identity. Each day at the same hour, Jake was not getting fitter or smarter. He was accumulating evidence in the only trial that matters, the question of who he actually is. And evidence has a strange property. Past a certain point, it becomes very hard to argue with, even for the voice. The fourth law might be the one you need most. Never reopen the deal at night, because the voice learns. Once the mornings were locked, it stopped attacking at 5 and started visiting at 10 at night, and it came back polite. It did not say quit. It said, maybe we should rethink the schedule. Maybe 10 minutes is too rigid. You have been doing great. You have earned some flexibility. Notice that this is the exact sentence that destroyed every previous version of Jake's life, dressed up as a reward. So he made one final rule. The terms of the code can only be discussed on one day, the first Sunday of each month, in daylight, on paper. Any thought about changing the system that shows up at any other time is automatically ignored, no matter how reasonable it sounds. Not argued with, ignored. The voice can say whatever it wants. The meeting is not today. 4 laws. The floor, written for the worst day. The obstacles, decided in advance. The votes, counted daily. The terms, locked until review day. Notice what is missing from that list. Motivation, intensity, feeling ready. None of it is there because none of it is architecture. And for 90 days, the architecture simply ran through a flu in week 5, through a project deadline that ate week 7, through mornings when Jake felt nothing at all, which is most mornings if anyone is honest, the string wound, the votes stacked, the door stayed shut, and then something happened that Jake had never once planned for. The people around him started to react to what he was becoming, and it was not with admiration. The comments started somewhere around day 60. His sister told him to take it easy, that life is supposed to be enjoyed. A friend joked that Jake had been replaced by a machine, and the joke had an edge that was not entirely a joke. Someone at work, watching him leave at the same hour every day, untouched by the office chaos, said the thing people always say, that level of rigidity cannot be healthy. Understand what was actually happening in those moments, because one day it will happen to you. Their discomfort had nothing to do with Jake's health. A man who has closed his doors becomes a mirror, and nobody asked for a mirror. As long as everyone around you negotiates, your own reopened doors feel normal. They feel like being human. But the moment one man nearby stops negotiating entirely, every excuse in the room gets repriced. His existence quietly announces that the impossible was never impossible. It was just uncomfortable. And people do not forgive that announcement easily. So they reach for the only words that make the mirror less sharp, obsessive, robotic, unhealthy, extreme. Listen carefully to those words when they come, because they are not a diagnosis, they are a receipt. They are the first external proof that the negotiation inside you is actually dead. Jake understood this fully on an evening 1 year after that first dinner. Different restaurant, different table, same scene playing in reverse. A younger colleague had been watching him for months and finally said it. I wish I had your discipline, man. The exact sentence Jake had once tossed across the table at Chris, like a coin, without thinking, and now it was arriving from the other side. Jake sat there for a moment, holding the strangest feeling of his life. He had become the man from the beginning of this video, the one who never misses, the one people lower their voices about. And what he said back to that colleague is the last thing you need to hear, because it is the entire war reduced to a single sentence. Jake gave him the only answer that was true. I am not disciplined. I just stopped negotiating. That is the whole war, reduced to 5 words. Remember the man from the beginning of this story. The man whose own promises rang hollow in his ears, who planned every Sunday knowing deep down that Wednesday would come collecting. That man did not become stronger. He did not find motivation, and he never learned to win the 5 in the morning argument. He walked to the place where the argument was born, and he closed the door on it. Today, when Jake gives his word to himself, it is not a hope. It is a fact with a date on it. and that is the scariest level of consistency. Not extreme effort, not superhuman will. A man whose word to himself is simply no longer open for discussion. The door is in front of you tonight. You know where it is now. You know about the floor, the obstacles, the votes, the locked terms, which means the last excuse just expired because closing that door was never a battle you have to win every morning. It is a decision, made once, never made again. No one is coming. Win the war within. If this video moves something in you, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell, because this is what we build here, week after week. And leave this in the comments. The one commitment you are closing the door on, no renegotiation. Write it where people can see it and make it real.